My name is Justin. I work at JCU. I'm actually in the stats and maths department, but we've worked for a long time. All my work's pretty much been done in the sugarcane industry, and in particular in this project here. This project we were looking at whether an irrigation support and lighting tool. Our tool, our app is actually online now. The QR code there, if you have your phones, if you want to scan it. I'm not going to get up with whipping your phones out at the moment, because if you're paying attention to that, it might sound better. Otherwise, if you don't trust the QR codes, you don't know how to use them, or you just don't like them, if you Google Opticane, I'm pretty sure we're the first thing that comes up in Google now, not the Brazilian singer. But yeah, so today I just wanted to go through I really want you to scan the QR code. I got in trouble for it at ASSET not having it, so now it's there. Yeah, I'll go a bit over the project, how we kind of divided the Burdekin region into climate zones in order to get our forecasts to work, to be more locally relevant to growers. Go over the tool itself, our weather forecasts, how we sort of shift those into an irrigation forecast, and some of the usage and feedback we've got. As I said, we've gone through this whole process now. It is up, it's live. We wouldn't have been able to do it without constant feedback from the guys at BPS and from actual growers. So the usage and feedback is actually a really important part of developing this app. So just a bit of a background. So this project was originally designed as an irrigation decision support tool. And those have been around for a while. We've got plenty of different sorts of irrigation decision support tools. More recently, as we've seen in the previous talk as well, these sort of decision support tools are all moving towards either web apps, online tools, and often trying to do this in a free or low-cost way in order to get information back out to people. The problem with that is that a lot of these tools don't really integrate forecast weather conditions, and if they do have forecast weather conditions, there's limitations around that, because most of the forecasts aren't locally generated. You've got one forecast for the whole Burdekin urban region. So a big part of our project was trying to get that scale of those forecasts down to something that's more meaningful. And in order to do all this, we needed to create a model that integrates local weather forecasts and provides irrigation in an easy-to-use web app. We've heard about that a few times now, but a lot of the previous talks might have been about improving communication and keeping things simple, and that's what we got in through this project. The feedback we kept is make it simple, or I'm just not going to use it. So you'll see that come up a lot. As I mentioned, this was actually built initially for irrigation. Because we were doing that integrated feedback, we kept talking to growers and to BPS extension staffs. It actually extended into a much larger, more broad set of management advice. This is what it looks like at the moment. It did not look this good to begin with, and you'll see that in a minute. The major tools we have, we do show current conditions from a bunch of weather stations that we've got access through BPS. We do have forecasts for regions within the Burdekin, and again, the irrigation was the main focus of the app, but we did extend into different sorts of tasks, being able to integrate to show what the weather's doing now, what we think it's going to do, and how that would relate to specific tasks you might be doing, whether that's spraying, harvesting, planting, burning. I think we have burning tool, fishing. We have a fishing tool in there too. This is apparently that's an important part of growing sugarcane. This was just to show our action learning approach to the importance of actually getting continuous feedback from growers. As I said, the app did not look great to start with. The far left there, the original project, CSIP, I kind of helped build that. That was my first foray into trying to build these things. The flash one on the end, that's our IT guy. He knows what he's doing, obviously. Looks a lot better now. We have actually developed this as primarily a mobile first interface. So if you do go to it on your phone, it should look good. That's what we designed it to do. It is the same site, unlike the previous one, previous talk we just had with the pharmacist. It's the same site whether you go through it on your computer, your tablet, your mobile phone. It just automatically changes shape to make use of the screen size. Yeah, so without that sort of feedback, we wouldn't have gotten to this point, and without proper IT guide, we wouldn't have got to this point. I do want to talk a little bit about climate zones. So this is our vertical area that we were working with. We identified these 5 climate zones based on long range historical data on rainfall, temperature, radiation, but also based on feedback from industry. And from that, we divided the vertical into these 5 zones. And these are what we use to develop the forecasts. And we actually take bomb forecasts. I might just go back and forth here. We take bomb forecasts based on the grid. The grid is kind of meaningless by itself. We could try and go down to an individual. This grid's a 5 by 5 kilometer grid, essentially. We could go down to that level, but that creates a lot of extra processing power. It's a lot of extra work for us. By dividing it into these 5 climate zones, by taking the weather forecasts and sort of honing into these 5 zones, we get something that's easy to understand, is easy for us to actually compute, and is still locally relevant to the growers. And we did this in order to capture the differences within the vertical region. Yeah, so that's a trade-off between accuracy and simplicity. But we go to a smaller zone, but not so small that we can't actually process this. So the initial design when we first made this, our first page was this weather station data, the current conditions, and that's still a big part of it. It's still probably from the last time I looked at it, it's still the most visited part of our site. And all we're doing here is literally just providing a way to easily look at the current conditions from around the vertical. Again, these weather stations are primarily BPS weather stations. We did put one just specifically for the project. That's the one at Brada Journal Road. We start off with just the pure map. You can go and select it. If you do actually log in and start to create your own account with this, you will actually remember what your favorite weather station is. You can go directly to that, or you can just click around, scroll through, end up with a summary of the conditions as they are. You can go further into each of those conditions and actually look at, say, the wind direction, wind speed, and just basically go into more and more detail. So we've done this intentionally. We've gone from as little information as we can show on one slide to begin with, but the ability to drill down into the information that we have to get as specific as you actually want. In terms of weather forecasts, the app's set out the same way, but we are doing these forecasts for those individual zones rather than individual spots. Again, you can click through those, find the region that's relevant to you. If you log in, you can set that region, it'll show you that automatically. You can even start to set alarms and stuff to send you messages when important things happen, like if the temperature gets too hot or too cold. You can drill down into the forecast for each day for the next 7 days, and drill down into the particular variable and start to look at the rainfall probabilities going towards how likely it is to rain over the next 7 days. We took this information and as I said, the focus of this was supposed to be irrigation. We wanted to help people try and make decisions around whether or not they should irrigate. And a really important part of that is being able to decide whether you need to irrigate in the future, in the next 7 days, we're hoping for 2 weeks, in order to actually be able to schedule that ahead of time rather than just hoping it'll work out on the day. To be able to do that, we need the information about whether or not how the crop is growing. So we need conserve data, we need the forecast, and we actually need to merge that all together and simulate when the next irrigation event is going to occur. We did that using the Irrigation crop model, which you may or may not be familiar with. So if you actually log into Opticane with your Irrigation account, if you are on the Irrigation, it will start to import that data straight away, and it will feed Irrigation our forecasts along with all the data that you already have about when you irrigated and what your irrigation conditions are. So you can set up, usually we talk about soil water deficit. So if the soil water deficit drops below some threshold, assume you're going to need to irrigate. We just feed the model the forecast data to say, well, it's going to rain in 3 days. You're not going to need to irrigate because you're not actually going to drop below your soil water deficit. We do this for a range of possible forecasts in order to give essentially a chance of irrigation. This is something we're still trying, we still probably do need to work on some more to get better clarity or better simplification around what that sort of means, a chance of irrigation. But essentially it's like a chance of rainfall. It's a 30% chance that rain's going to fall. There's a 70% chance that you're going to need to irrigate because rain doesn't fall. So this was my attempt to try and show just how that works. Like I said, we start off with, we run the observed data, we feed the model the forecasts, a bunch of different forecasts. For each of those forecasts, if we project the soil water deficit, if 2 out of 5 of those forecasts say that it's going to irrigate it, you're going to hit that soil water deficit on Wednesday. One may say it's Friday. 4 out of 5, you're going to need to irrigate at some point in the next week. So 80% chance that irrigation next week, most likely on Wednesday. That was the goal. It hasn't been, unfortunately, a huge focus for us. We didn't get a lot of feedback on this because we do have the irrigation forecasts haven't been as involved as we want. Like I said, we've got a lot more feedback on the other tasks, and that's developed as we've gone through it based on what people actually wanted out of the app. Again, with the actual visualizations, we follow the same pattern. If you can log in, it will show you all your farms, all your irrigation units. We don't have quite the same level of geospatial data, but it does have locations. If you've uploaded your locations into Irrigweb, it will show you on the map where they are, what they look like. The latest observed soil water deficit, the latest irrigation, if there has been an irrigation lately, and it will actually start to look at what the soil water deficit will actually do over the next 7 days. And you can drill down into those information for each unit. So the other big thing about the Opticane that came out of talking with people were these tasks. Fishing tasks in particular up here, we've tried to throw on the tides and stuff like that, but more importantly for say things like spraying status. So we take into consideration some of the general sort of advice you might need for spraying, your delta C, wind speeds, your temperature, and whether or not it's going to rain over the next 3 days. So if all the conditions are good, but we think it's going to rain in 3 days, maybe hold off spraying because it's all just going to wash off. Don't really want to do that. And we do this for spraying, burning, planting, and harvesting, I think, at the moment. It's all the same information. It's all rainfall, it's all weather, it's all... you could go to any of the forecasts themselves and try and build this information out yourself. What we've tried to do is take best practice management ideas, information that we have from the extension officers, and actually just say, well, here's the data, here's what it actually means for this task, so you don't have to go and find it all yourself. And that was a big thing again from the feedback. One of the advantages that a lot of people saw in this tool was having all that information in one spot, having your observed stuff along with your forecasts, along with advice, all in one place. That's where Opticane actually went into more of a one-stop toolbox for all these sort of management decisions. One of the tools, the more involved tools that we did get some really good feedback was this crop water use forecast for generic blocks. So you can go into this, you don't need your web account, you can just go in and have a look at this. It will forecast the amount of water that your crop's actually going to need based on roughly when you planted, whereabouts you planted, so you can choose your region, whether it's a plant or a tomb crop, then yeah, the planting date, so planting month, is what we've used. So sort of June, July, August through. And what they'll show is our forecast on how much water you're actually going to use over the next week, alongside how much rain we actually think you're going to get for the next week. So you get a forecast of the water balance that you might actually have for the next week, without having to go into the specific details of setting up each and every individual block for yourself. We know people like this because at one point it died, and we got some people saying, "Where's this tool gone?" So we put it back up. So it was really actually good to hear that when people noticed when this was gone, people were using it.
Justin, have you seen much difference in water use between the different districts? If you put the same scenario, we would see much difference.
You will see a difference, particularly in when you plant. Basically, the biggest differences come with the age of the crop. So when the timing, you will see slight differences between regions occasionally, but this also assumes. So one of the assumptions behind this is that your crop is well irrigated up until that forecast point, which means that generally there's not a lot of variability. Like you're not getting that stress effect because it's not stressed up to that point. And because we are generally only looking at like a 7-day forecast, you're not going to see a huge amount of variation over 7 days. When we did have the weekly and the monthly sort of stuff, then you see differences as the because you've got that age effect as well, and you will see how that responds to different zones. One of the things with the forecasts, I mean, joke about the forecasts. Nobody likes forecasts. They're always wrong. I'm not going to say that ours is better, that ours is better, ours is definitely not perfect. All the forecasts are going to be forecasts, therefore there's going to be uncertainty around that. One of the neat things that we have seen, especially with the longer forecasts when we had them up, was that we are capturing that spatial variability in forecasts. So if the rain's coming in from the west, then we'll see forecast differences for the western zones, but not in the coastal zones. That to me is really cool because that means that we are actually getting growers the information that is more relevant to them specifically, depending on where they are in the region, rather than just getting a whole urban or vertical forecast. So I touched on this before. The usage of feedback, we were in continuous contact with BPS and with growers. We did run some workshops as well with growers. The things we got out about building this app is it needs to be simple, it needs to be mobile friendly because that's where people are going to be using it, and it needs to be simple. And we got this repeatedly for everyone. No, remove stuff. All I want to see is this little bit because otherwise if it's too complicated, I'm not going to touch it. That would be my advice for anybody else to design this sort of stuff. Keep it simple. Yeah, that's pretty much those are the key concepts that went into the model. We do have some extra special features that have worked in that I didn't really want to talk about. I didn't try and go into too much detail. In particular, we have developed an NDVI map of NDVI and crop cover, which goes off pure satellite images that could be. Have a look if there's something else you want to have a look at, that'd be a good tool to look through. And that's just everyone that was in on this project.